Lay It on the Line novel series. Book 1. Prodigal, written by Lauren Landry, copyright 2018, all rights reserved, ISBN 978 1-9770 to 9778 1. I would like to thank my family and friends for supporting me, as well as helping me with this long process. It has taken me over 5 years to finally finish this first book in my series, so I am very happy to finally finish it. Special thanks to my husband, Father, and Richard for sharing some of their stories and information on law enforcement. Thanks to my mother, stepfather, and pastor for the Christian values and helping me change for the better and to set my sights to live for God. JJ as well as myself has gone through our own transformation, and this is truly a prodigal story for both of us. I would also like to thank my friends who never gave up on me and pushed me to continue, as well as help edit this book. Jasmine, Tracy, and my husband did most of the editing. Also, a shout out to my best friend Heather, who was my inspiration for Sean. Above all else, I give God all the glory and praise in helping me through the ups and downs of life. Thank you for reading, and I hope you enjoy the first book in this book series. Chapter 1. New Iberia, Louisiana, 1991. Faint snoring could be heard in the back of the church service, accompanied by gurgling of spit. A few people turned to watch the younger male. His arm was propped under his chin as he snored faintly in his sleep. A few of them chuckled, while others turned up their noses in disgust. The man's mouth hung open as his head tilted back, leaning on the hard pew for a head prop. The preacher asked the congregation to stand for the reading of the word, and the older woman sitting beside the sleeping man reached over and poked him hard. Jonathan James Simoneaux. A sharp pain in the ribs jolted throughout his body as his mother jabbed him with her fingers. Johnny. The jabs were followed by stern whispers. JJ, his mother, sitting beside him, gave the young man another poke in the ribs. The last poke made JJ jump out of his sleep, causing a snort to come out. The young blonde man, sitting beside JJ, let out a laugh. The blonde quickly covered his mouth as his eye went wide. The mother gave the blonde a death glare. Sean, don't laugh at your brother, you hush, and JJ, get up. I don't care that you worked last night, you are in church. The mother tried to be quiet as she fussed her grown sons. She gave them both another death glare as she stood up with her Bible in hand. I don't care how old you two are, you are not too old for me to take you outside and put you over my knee. She turned back to fuss at JJ, who was still half asleep. She glared at Sean and motioned for him to stand up. Her voice was low, but stern and full of agitation. A 19-year-old and 21-year-old acting like they are 5. The older grandmother added in as she stood beside her daughter. What is the chapter again? The grandmother asked out loud, causing a few people to look at her. Mom, you are just as bad as the boys. The mother shushes the grandmother. Oh Lord, I am gonna have to pray for you all, always giving your mother grief. JJ, go wash your face in the bathroom or something. She hissed and turned to face the preacher on the pulpit. Sean pointed to his brother and continued to silently laugh, picking fun. JJ glared up at him for a moment before using his knuckle to punch the back of Sean's knee. Sean slapped a hand to his mouth to keep from screaming as his knee buckled. Sean caught himself on the pew and glanced around to see if anyone witnessed the punch. JJ's heavy eyes shot open as he almost fell asleep again. He blinked a couple times, shaking his head, trying to gain consciousness of where he was exactly. JJ ran a hand through his messy black hair and slowly stood up to make his way to the bathroom. Pulling down his wrinkled dress shirt, he made his way to the bathroom. The rows of people in front of him were standing with their Bibles open as the pastor on the pulpit read. The building was small, and the congregation was even smaller. Only about 30 people were spread throughout the pews with their attention on the front. JJ could see his mother still fussing his brother before he turned to enter the hallway. The old country church's wooden floor creaked as he walked to the bathroom. JJ didn't mind coming to the church he grew up in, he just wasn't that into it as his mother Mary. He was 21 years old, and the young Cajun just wanted to go out and do his own thing. Fishing, hunting, heck, even just watching the baseball game on TV would be enjoyable, but he knew that would upset his mother. So, to avoid an argument, JJ came to church. Even if he worked the night before and only had 4 hours of sleep, JJ still came with his mom. JJ would always tell himself that when he was older, or up in age, then he would take it more seriously. Oh, how the young thought they were invincible, that church was just for those older folks getting good with the Lord before they passed away. JJ was taught to know better than that, to always attend church and follow God's word, but he was a young hardhead and thought he knew everything. For now, JJ would just attend church for his mother's sake. JJ splashed water on his face while smacking his cheeks a bit. The cold water along with the stinging pain started to wake him up. He knew if he went back to sleep on that pew, JJ would never hear the end of it. Between his mother fussing and his younger brother teasing him about being fussed at, it just wasn't worth it. Church finally ended around 12 o'clock. Some of the members stayed around to talk, but the boys just wanted to go home and eat. Johnny hopped into his truck and started the engine, while Sean hopped in the passenger seat and glared at him. JJ, you know I'm going to get you back for hitting me, I almost cursed, and you know mama would have torn my hide, man. Yeah, well, next time don't laugh at me. JJ didn't take Sean seriously. He was about to back out the parking lot, but an elderly lady waddled up to the tall truck. She banged on the door and JJ rolled down the window. What you got, mama? Johnny asked his grandmother. Your mama needs you to go to the store and pick up some stuff for supper. I can't, I got to go home and take out Sweetie to use the bathroom. The old lady dug in her bag for the list. Snaggletooth, JJ mumbled, teasing the old decrepit dog named Sweetie, who his grandmother loved to death. Sean couldn't help but let out a laugh. Hey mama. When you gonna make me those cookies? Sean yelled from the passenger seat. I just made you some last week. You ate all those cookies already? She asked as her arm was elbow deep in her purse. He has a tapeworm. JJ joked. Sean smacked his brother's arm. No, I don't. I just like her cookies. JJ smacked him back, and the two proceeded into a slap fist fight. Here, I found it. The grandma lifted the piece of paper, and the two boys quit hitting each other and sat as if nothing happened. Okay mama, see you at home. JJ tossed the paper in Sean's face and backed out. Rude much? Sean caught the paper that was thrown in his face and then placed it on the seat between them. JJ drove up to the small grocery store and parked. He then slides out the lifted-up Ford, changed his dress shirt to a all-ragin' Cajun shirt that was behind his seat, and walked towards the store. As he read over the list, Sean rolled down the window and proceeded to shout out things he wanted from inside the store. JJ just shook his head as he used his shoulder to push open the metal and glass door. All in all, it was just bricks in the wall. Johnny sang as he grabbed a basket and walked forward. He began to read off the list out loud to himself as he made his way through the store. It wasn't very busy, and being Sunday, most people were at home or eating out. Only a few customers littered the store. Johnny rolled the buggy forward and began to drop the stuff in the basket while continuing to sing. We don't need no education. He threw a couple of cans of green beans in the cart, then continued down the aisle. We don't need no thought control teacher, them kids alone. JJ went up a bit in volume as he sang. Hey teacher. Leave them kids alone. A couple passing looked at him like he was crazy, but JJ didn't care. The Cajun just gave them a smile and continued to gather the things his mother needed. There was no shame to that boy. JJ grabbed a couple of packs of meat and tossed them in the basket as he continued to sing the Pink Floyd song. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? He chuckled to himself, not caring about the others looking at him. JJ stopped and checked to make sure he got everything on the list. JJ knew his mother would send him back if he didn't get everything she needed. When the contents of the basket matched the list, JJ made his way towards the front. As he passed the drink section, Johnny tossed in a six-pack, which he would have to hide and drink. His mother forbade alcohol in the house and didn't approve of the boys drinking, but boys will be boys. JJ's last item was for Sean, a bag of pork skins. JJ made sure to grab them so he wouldn't hear Sean cry that Johnny didn't get him anything. His younger brother, by a couple years, knew how to push his buttons. The whining Sean did when he didn't get his way was one of those buttons for JJ. JJ then made his way up to the checkout register. All the lines were full to his surprise. It seemed like everyone decided to check out at the same time as he did. It was like that everywhere he went, and the Cajun started to think that theory was fact. Since JJ knew he was going to be there a while, he grabbed a magazine and thumbed through it as he waited. One lady he had passed earlier singing was in front of him. The woman stared at JJ almost in disgust as he thumbed through the hunting magazine. JJ looked up to see if he needed to move forward and noticed the woman giving him the evil eye. JJ lifted a brow and then slowly gave her a big cheesy smile. The woman huffed, quickly looked away, and put her things on the belt. JJ laughed. Pleased with himself, the Cajun started to whistle the song he was singing earlier. It was still stuck in his head, and his impulse to keep singing it was strong. Johnny put his foot on the bottom bar of the basket, leaned on it, and proceeded to push it forward and backwards. His focus was on the pages of the magazine as he read an article that caught his eye. He read the article under the gun photo, oblivious to the scene going on a couple aisles down. Hearing a commotion a couple aisles down, JJ at first didn't think anything of it. The male didn't even bother to looking up from his magazine. He was in his own world until a woman let out a quick but sharp scream. JJ let the magazine fall to the rail of the buggy as he glanced up to see what the yelling was about. A scruffy man was waving a knife demanding all the cash from the register. As the scared and close to tears woman did as he demanded, JJ watched in anger. The robber quickly snatched the bag, then made a run for the front door. Without thinking, JJ dropped his magazine in the basket and grabbed the can of the green beans that was in his cart. JJ then ran out the door after the man, Johnny pitching the can in his hands as hard as he could. Using those baseball skills of his from high school, the can left his hand with precision. The can went spiraling through the air and pegged the man in the back of the head. The man let out a grunt before dropping to the ground out cold. JJ did a fist pump in the air and brought it down. Sean opened the door of the truck and stood up on the railing with his mouth hung open in astonishment. "Bro, that is like a walk, he gets to go to first base." "Wait a minute, wasn't that from that movie Crocodile Dundee?" Sean yelled out, joking as he hopped out his brother's truck. "I should start calling you Alligator JJ." Sean spoke as he walked cautiously to the unconscious man on the concrete. The blonde then proceeded to poke the crooked shoulder with his foot. "Oh man, he is knocked out, Johnny," he yelled towards his brother. Sean noticed the knife beside the man's hand and the bag of money clutched in the other. "Dude, you went like full Batman." Sean slid the knife with his shoe away from the man's grasp in case he would wake up. A couple of the cashiers and other shoppers applauded JJ, even the woman that looked at JJ strange couldn't help but clap. The owner of the store hung up the phone after calling the police and ran to give praise to Hero. The feeling JJ had stopping the criminal and helping this poor store owner was almost a high. It felt so good to act without thinking to stop this man. To serve justice gave JJ such a great feeling. A feeling that he had never felt before but enjoyed greatly. The young Southerner was always taught to give a hand to those who needed it, and that is exactly what Johnny did. The police took everyone's statements, and one deputy even joked with JJ. "You should join the force, man, we could use guys with your spunk." The Simoneaux brothers laughed at the deputy's joke, but JJ pondered on the thought for a couple moments. He let the idea do circles in his head a few times before asking the deputy about it further. "Where would I need to sign up?" The deputy could tell if JJ wasn't joking or not. The 22-year-old took it to heart and wanted to join the force. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing, but Johnny knew deep inside it was his calling. Besides, it beat working for his uncle's garage. Law enforcement would allow JJ to help other people in need. It was something he could make a career out of, something for him to be proud of. "Come by the station and I can get you an application." JJ shook the deputy's hand before leaving him to check the groceries out. "Oh man, Mama is gonna love this." Sean joked as he helped JJ carry the bags back to the truck. "I know, but let me tell her, okay? When you tell her things, she freaks out more. You have the worst way of explaining crap." JJ tossed the bags in the bed of the truck. "I know. I exaggerate, but dude. The way you pegged that guy with that can. Man. That poor can was dented up and crinkled. That dude for sure is seeing stars." Sean hopped into the truck and buckles his seatbelt. "Hey, you think we could have nicknames in the force? Like Batman and Robin or Chips or something?" Sean asked his brother. "What is this wee stuff?" JJ asked as he reached in the visor to grab his tattered ball cap. He popped it on his head and hopped in the driver's seat. "Oh, come on, you know it would awesome if me and you both joined." JJ just sat there with the seatbelt in his hand staring at Sean. "Do you always have to do what I do? Plus, Sean, you do not have the common sense to carry a gun, let alone be a police officer. People's lives in your hands is a scary thought." "Oh, come on, I can carry a gun. We go hunting all the time, dude." Sean rolled his eyes at his brother. "Yeah, and you shot a boar from the freaking truck. Stopped in the middle of the road. Oh Dodd, and don't forget the time you almost shot Uncle T screaming. It is rabbit season." "No, it's duck season," JJ mimicked Sean's voice. Sean couldn't help but crack up. "Hey man, that boar was good eating. And you know they would tear your butt up if you didn't get the high ground or hide behind something. Them piggies are dangerous, Sean, just know." JJ started up the truck after buckling his seatbelt. His brother was an idiot. The brothers both liked to clown around and act a fool, boys would be boys, but JJ had more common sense than Sean. The Simoneaux brothers were known for their crazy shenanigans like building ramps and trying to jump over ridiculous things. Roof jumping, mud surfing, gator wrestling, and barefoot hunting were just some of the daredevil stunts they performed. The boys knew how to make their mother worry, but Sean was far worse. Everything was a joke for him. JJ knew when to get serious. We will see Sean added in as he chowed down on his pigskins. Chapter 2, Mexico. Want something done? You do it yourself. Marina spoke out loud to her driver and the other male that sat in the front seat of the black Cadillac SUV. Her father's words echoed through her head as she sat fuming in the back seat. Marina watched out the front window, her caramel-colored eyes squinting, trying to see past the headlights' reach. The SUV barreled down the dark country road towards its destination, followed by a few other cars. Marina looked over her shoulder to make sure the others were keeping up with them. How much farther? She turned to face forward, and a few of her thick dark amber curls bounced over her shoulders. Juan said they were not far, and they had the freedom fighters surrounded. The man in the passenger seat answered. Marina watched him hold his rifle shakily as a wicked smile spread across her face. Nervous, Miguel? She, herself, was not afraid nor scared to face these freedom fighters. She enjoyed a good shootout, along with the adrenaline and carnage it produced. The thrill of taking a life was a monster that she needed to feed every now and again. Growing up in a world full of them, you either become one yourself or become the victim. Marina was far from a victim. Her father always taught her to always be her best self. Rather it be the best leader, the best businesswoman, or best killer. If anyone was to take her serious in a world dominated by men, she had to show them she meant business, and these freedom fighters were on her list. This small little group of freedom fighter had formed to try and take out Marina's group. Her men, and the cartel had a stronghold in the area. Marina's father, JJ Alvarez, wanted her to take care of this matter personally. Marina didn't mind, it was a break from the boring night she would have spent at home. When Marina grew bored, bad things tended to happen. Miguel shook his head and cleared his throat a bit. If you are afraid, that is all right, you are only human. It is natural. Her eyes left the man and darted out the window beside her. She tried not to smile, knowing what she was doing. Marina was playing with the emotions of this man. Pretty much telling him it is all right to be afraid like a child. Marina turned to watch the driver. The driver, who kept his mouth shut, had his eyes focused on the road. She knew they would not dare open their mouth to question her, and if they did, Marina would blow their brains out. She didn't care if it was her own men, no one meant anything to her. Like any other psychopath, she lacked empathy for others. But if you are going to be my bodyguard for the night, better grow a pair, Miguel. You are paid to take a bullet for me, not run away from the shooting. She hissed. Yes, ma'am. He mumbled a bit. Marina could hear the fear in his voice. What was that? She asked. Marina heard him, but she wanted him to sound a bit more confident. The man was getting paid handsomely to protect her. Even if she didn't need the protection, the least he could do was act like he was fearless, Marina thought. Yes, ma'am, he spoke in a firm tone. That is what I thought. You are new, so I forgive you this once, but make sure you learn quickly. Her eyes pierced through his soul almost as she watched him from behind. The Latina female knew Miguel could feel her staring. Miguel stopped shaking and held his rifle tight. She glanced down at his knuckles, which were almost white from his grip. Marina's head perked up in anticipation as she could hear hundreds of gunshots ringing out through the night air. Blood-curdling screams followed by muzzle flashes lit up the dark desert like a lightning storm up ahead. The dust swirled up as a few bodies hit the dirt, followed by the clanking of metal from their rifles. The scene that was covered in darkness finally gave way to the light by the headlights of the SUV. It pulled off the small dirt road, and the tires screeched to a halt in the loose gravel. The engine stayed humming as Marina looked ahead at the bodies on the ground. The headlights showed the grim sight of the massacred men on the ground a few feet ahead. The bodies were strung out beside bushes and other desert shrubbery. Some of the men lay with guns still in a death grip, lifeless, while others were clutching their wounds and sobbing for a quick end. A wicked sense of joy fluttered up in Marina, making her eyes glisten with joy. A small group of 5 or so men emerged from the darkness and made their way towards the vehicle. The men held their rifles close to their waist as they came up behind the black SUV. The leader of the small brigade opened the back door, and Marina emerged. Her black heel boot hit the ground, followed by the other as she slides off the white leather of the back seat. The female was adorned in a solid black Armani suit jacket and slacks with a solid black undershirt. Marina always dressed for business. Another thing her father taught her, dress for the job you want. A lot of times her father's advice would circle in her wicked mind, often keeping her head level and from flying off the handle. Where did you find them? She spoke in her native tongue, Spanish, when she asked the man who held the door open. Marina adjusted her suit jacket before making her way towards the bodies. The other men followed right beside her and behind her. Miguel hustled out the SUV to walk a bit in front of her, to protecting her from anything. The cooks caught wind of them and called us in. Luckily we were not far from them, Juan explained. Marina glanced over toward Juan and then turned her head to focus the first body. Did they disrupt the batch any? She queried. No ma'am. Juan pulled down his do-rag from his face. Is this all of them? Marina asked as she paused by the first body for a moment. The rest have been tracked to the town up ahead and will be dealt with. Marina turned to face Juan. Make sure every one of them are killed. Hang them up or behead them, whatever you need to do to let the others know. Not only to tell them but show them. If those townspeople don't keep themselves in our business, they will end up like them. Marina heard groaning, and she quickly spun on her heels to walk towards the sound. Her blood was already boiling from anger at these fighters, so hearing them still alive sent her over the edge. They were disrupting her workers and setting behind production, making her lose time and money. Marina noticed which injured man was making the most noise, and she speed walked towards him. Marina used the front of her foot under his shoulder to kick him over on his back. She then cocked back her foot and kicked him as hard as she could in his face. Her heel contacted with his jaw and she could hear and feel it pop a bit. Marina let out a growl as she watched the man rock in pain. Stupid. She started to yell and curse at the man. Her voice rang out and overpowered any other sound around her. The man used one hand to keep a hold of his bleeding bullet hole and his other to cover his face, pleading for mercy. The more he cried and pleaded, the more she kicked him in his side, breaking and shattering ribs. Marina finally stopped and moved her hair out of her face. She was beyond pissed, and when she hit that point, anything was possible. Go and make sure the rest are dead, she commanded to Juan. Juan then turned to his men barking orders. She reached to Miguel and pulled out the handgun that was sticking out his side. Marina made sure it was loaded before she squatted close to the man on the ground. His pathetic wheezing made her face twist in disgust. She looked him over as if he was worthless, not worthy of the breath he was given. The gun was heavy in her hands, but the way the steel felt on her warm skin gave her chills. The power it possessed made her glossy lips form an unsettling smile. Please, I was only doing this for my family. The man coughed out more blood. Marina placed the handgun muzzle flat against the man's temple slowly. So am I, were the only words she uttered as she squeezed the trigger. Marina watched the blood slowly trickle down and make a trail in the dirt. It reminded her of the time she broke her grandmother's religious candles. Look at that. Marina used the gun to point at the trail and follow it with the gun. The blood looks the wax out to the votive Catholic candles my abuela burns. I used to love to play in the wax and watch it pour out as a child. The way it felt, the slight burning then cooling sensation on your skin, and how it left it silky smooth after you peeled it off. Marina chuckled a bit remembering her childhood memory, but then her smile faded. She called me the devil for messing with them and spanked me. She said they were prayers, and I was messing with them. Miguel just stared down at her, not saying a word. At first, she didn't know why she was telling him this, but then she remembered more of the memory. The next day I replaced the pictures of the Virgin Mary with the picture of Santa Muerte, the skeleton counterpart of her. The skeleton holding the scythe, the goddess of death. Her screams of horror were music to my ears. She kept screaming celebration of devastation and of hell. Over and over and over. I finally used the other candle to smash over the back of her head to shut her up. Marina paused her story and stood up to face Miguel. She never laid a hand on me again. Marian knew the man was probably confused. If I could do that to my own grandmother, what do you think I will do to people who cross me? She handed the gun back to him. Like death, La Santa Muerte does not discriminate. Everyone, rich, poor, or somewhere in between, will die, and La Santa Muerte will listen to the prayers of them all as well. Life is not guaranteed, but death is. Remember that. Miguel. Marina pointed a finger at him and then made her way toward the SUV. Miguel followed her closer this time, making sure to do his job. Marina hoped he took that as a warning to always obey her and never betray her. She paused and waited for him to open the door for her. She slowly slides into the back seat and fixed her hair a bit. Take me home, I need to give my father the good news. Marina settled into the seat, pleased with herself. Guerra contra el narcotráfico en Mexico, the Mexican drug war. The criminal enterprises known as cartels dominated majority of Mexico and South America. Their reach stretched far and wide with thousands of followers and members. From the rich to the poor, just trying to make money for their family. The cartel was a force to be reckoned with. They were merciless and savage to those who got in their way, often displaying dead or decapitated bodies to the public. It was a medieval strategy to psyche out others who might think about crossing them. Most of the Mexican government has claimed that their primary focus is on dismantling the powerful drug cartels rather than on preventing drug trafficking, which is left to U.S. functionaries. While the other half is being paid by the cartel. Corruption at its deepest. The almighty dollar is often worth more than life itself. However, the American CIA finally came up with their own way in solving this pandemic. Part of the plan included getting rid of all the cartels except for one. One cartel that they could monitor and perhaps control. Although Mexican drug cartels, or drug trafficking organizations, have existed for several decades, their influence has increased since the demise of the Colombian Cali and Medellin cartels in the 1990s. The CIA knew it could never be rid of the criminals, but could they be monitored? Mexican drug cartels now dominate the wholesale illicit drug market, and in 2007, controlled 90% of the cocaine entering the United States. The cartel they chose out of several was the Alvarez cartel. The Alvarez cartel carved a bloody path with violence and power. This brutality helped them make their way up the ranks to be the top cartel in Mexico. The family cartel started in the 30s during Prohibition days, running whiskey up to the States. This gave them a firm footing and built their foundation. In the 90s, the cartel jumped at the opportunity to get into the cocaine business. It flourished even more at the death of Pablo Escobar. Currently, the cartel has broadened their trade into weapons dealership as well as other goods. The cartel soon would expand their trade, first into the United States, with the help from the CIA, as well as Russia and Ukraine. Soon after, their plans would be to make the jump to global distribution. Soon the CIA would send in some of their men to make the deal and help take down the other competitors, jump-starting this pound. Chapter 3. JJ and Sean were seated across from their mother and grandmother at the dinner table. The table was littered with various dishes of food and glasses. JJ let his fork slide onto the empty plate sitting before him, causing it to make a clunking sound. His brother was on his second helping of rice and gravy, while his grandmother feeds scraps to her ugly dog. So I have something interesting tell y'all. JJ picked up his glass of soda and downed the rest of it. Oh, man, Mom, you should have seen JJ today, Sean blurted out with a mouthful of food. A few pieces of rice fell on his shirt, causing his mother to fuss. Sean, you get more food on your shirt than in your mouth. Sean used his finger and thumb to pick up the stray rice grains, then popped them into his mouth. Anyways, I decided a career I would like to get into. Law enforcement. JJ's eyebrows fluttered up and down. Oh yeah, and when did you decide that? His mother questioned as she began to pick up the dishes. Today actually. I stopped a robber today at the store. JJ moved the glass side to side on the table. Oh Mom, that dude never had a chance. JJ chunked a can of beans at the dude's head. Sean started to lean back in his chair as he yapped away telling the story. JJ used his foot to tip his brother's chair backwards, causing it to flip. Dang it, JJ. Why man? Sean groaned as he tried to stand up. Because I told you to let me tell Mama. Anyways, that happened, and I got to talking with the deputies, and they told me to swing by and get an application. JJ quickly finished before his brother could tell anymore. The grandmother's dog ran toward Sean, sniffing him. Sean let out a squeal, causing the dog to run back to the grandmother in fear. Ugly snaggletooth, wimp dog. Sean yelled. Sean, Andrew, don't do that to her. His grandmother fussed at Sean. That's not a dog, that's a rat. JJ added in, and the two brothers laughed. Oh my poor baby. The grandmother swaddled the small dog, comforting her. Maybe I should go into the canine department, I always wanted one of those dogs. JJ pondered out loud. I don't know, but if you break my furniture, I'm gonna break your butt. Sean, go take out the trash, and JJ, come help me with these dishes, boy. Mary barked orders to her boys. Sean sat the chair upright and went to do as his mother asked. Mama, when you gonna make me some bread pudding? JJ asked as he began to gather the dishes. The grandmother let out a laugh and put the dog on the floor. You two just want food all the time. I'm not a baker, you know. Yeah, but you sit at home and just watch cooking shows all day. You think you would have us a lot of food? Sean added. The grandmother waved her hand towards them, signaling them to stop their picking. Well, Rosemary, thank you for supper, but I have to get home. The grandmother kissed her daughter and then JJ. Yeah, it is almost 8, you might turn into a werewolf if you stay up any later. Johnny teased. The grandmother swatted his butt lightly and then kissed his cheek. Love you my baby, she then called her dog and left the house. JJ locked the door and his brother outside before going help his mother. I just want you to be sure that is what you want to do. It is a dangerous job. Also, don't just jump into it, then 2 months down the road up and quit. JJ rolled his eyes a bit. And don't forget you have to look at your grandmother's car, his mother added. Yeah, it sounds like one of the Star Wars fighter planes. JJ added. His mother let out a laugh, but her smile left her when she heard Sean beating on the door. JJ, let me in, man. A muffled voice called out, followed by pounding. What is the password? JJ called out to him. Oh, come on, man. Sean began to beat on the door. Johnny, let your brother in the house. Mary let out an aggravated sigh. There were a couple more pounds on the door, then the sound of pottery being broken. Sean. That better have not been my plants you broke. Mary rushed to the door and swung open the door to investigate. JJ covered his laugh as to not get a swat from his mother. Well, he wouldn't let me in, man. Sean had been throwing himself at the door and fell on one of her pots. Clean this mess up, and you are lucky you didn't break that pot your dad gave me before he passed away, boy. JJ stood in the doorway and watched his mother fuss at his younger brother. Today would be one of those happy memories imprinted on your mind. Like those memories that would creep in your thoughts when you were older, giving you a smile when you thought back on the olden days. The days when it was a simpler time, and all was right in your corner of the universe. A certain smell, phrase, or object would bring you back to that time in your life. Those moments of great joy, or horror, or sadness that stained your memory and you can never forget no matter how far you push it back into your mind. Those were the kind that were always there and would always pop up from time to time. Sometimes out of the blue or when you need them the most to remind you who you are or where you came from. For JJ, this was of those moments. This would be a memory of the few remaining good times he had left with his family. A golden memory of his time as a young man, yet untarnished by the cruel world. Somehow, he knew he would need to hold on to this memory. For the Cajun's future would become a giant heartache, he just didn't know it yet. Chapter 4. Marina strutted into the mansion home. The mansion was one of the many homes the family owned, but this was favored as being the home Marina was raised in. She was followed by Miguel and a personal servant. The maid held out to her a bottle of cold water, which Marina took quickly. She entered the living room to find it empty without surprise. The only sound that echoed off the large space was the news coming from the TV. The living room was always the cleanest, being no one ever went in there except to greet guests. Her father was always in his office or out doing business. Her mother was never home, and his little brother was always playing video games. If Marina's mother was home, she was always out by the pool or in the bedroom. Rarely was she around Marina or her father. Marina learned from an early age to entertain herself. Often it meant shooting a gun out back with the guards or learning to fight. Her father insisted for her to be well educated and had many professors come to teach her in home. Not only was she to learn the basic college teaching, but also other languages such as English and Italian. Her mother insisted she learn to play the piano. Marina's eyes fell on the black piano in the corner and sneered at it. She hated the lessons with a passion, and every time she laid eyes on the thing, it brought back bad memories. After taking a few sips of the bottle, Marina decided to look for her father. She knew he was home because the TV was on and the faint dim light from his office was glowing. Marina waved her hand to dismiss both Miguel and the maid. Miguel stood by the entrance to the living room while the maid wandered off back to the kitchen. Marina strolled across the large living area towards the office door. She reached out and used the back of her hand to knock a few times before turning the doorknob. The strong scent of cigar smoke hit her as she entered. Marina was used to the smell and often enjoyed it. It meant her father was in a relaxed mood and not in a hot-tempered one. A temper she shared with him. Marina glanced over to the right where he was standing. He held a glass of amber liquid in one hand and his cigar in the other. He was standing there admiring the huge Poseidon painting. It depicted the Greek god on a chariot pulled by seahorses while the rage of the sea crashed around him. She always liked the painting, the sea, and chaos always seemed to calm her down for some reason. Marina walked towards the large leather chair a few feet behind him. She placed her hand on the back of it and felt its cool smooth surface. Marina glanced to the large desk which was a few more feet to the side of her. It was neatly arranged with a laptop, a phone, and pictures on top of its dark surface. A roaring fire was lit behind it in the fireplace, which added to the majesty of the room. She always enjoyed this room the best, and it often set her in a better mood. Her eyes darted back to her father when he began to speak to her. Poseidon, Greek god of the sea, or Neptune to the Romans. Poseidon was god of the sea, earthquakes, storms, and horses. He also is considered one of the most bad-tempered, greediest amongst the Olympian gods. He was known to be vengeful when insulted. The Romans feared him and avoided the sea at times. Zeus ruled the sky, but Poseidon ruled the world. Mr. Alvarez spoke, acknowledging his daughter's presence. Marina heard this tale and others like it time and time again. Her father studied a lot of Roman and Greek generals. He claimed they were the most powerful empire in the world, and if he was to build his own, he needed to learn from them. With Poseidon being Mr. Alvarez's favorite, the god had a hand in naming his daughter. A lot of times the Greek tragedies were her bedtime stories, instead of the normal fairy tales. Marina kept silent as her father was about the only person she feared and respected. Joaquin. Did the flowers come in? An older female's voice echoed from the living room. Marina's eyes narrowed as she watched the door creak open. The old wrinkled woman stuck her head in to speak with her son. Ask the maid mother. I just arrived home a few moments ago. He called out as he still stood in front of the painting. The old woman was about to ask him another question, but was silenced when her eyes fell on Marina. The old woman quickly waddled away from the door and towards the kitchen, avoiding Marina's gaze. Mr. Alvarez's mother and Marina's grandmother didn't like his praise of the pagans, but Marina did. Anything Marina's grandmother hated Marina grew to love, including more of the morbid things. Marina always donned some sort of skeleton jewelry to freak her abuela or grandmother out. Every time she laid eyes on Marina, she did the sign of the cross. Marina loved to get to people, and her main person was her grandmother. She would always regret the day she named Marina the devil. I see your abuela is still not talking to you. What did you do this time, Marina? He questioned her without taking his eyes off the blue and green waves. He knew Marina was always doing some sort of trick to the old woman. Most times it was harmful and entertaining to him. I poisoned her cat. I grew tired of it laying on my things and getting hair on my clothes. So, I feed it rat poison, Marina answered with a snicker on her face. Mr. Alvarez closed his eyes a moment and shook his head. He was a bit disappointed but tried to hide the smile. He hated the cat as equally as his daughter. Are you two ever going to get along with your abuela? He queried. Marina remained silent for a moment to think. Most likely not. The battle between the two had been going strong for 15 years, and neither side looked as if they were giving up. What about tonight's endeavor? Is it taken care of? Her father finally asked Marina a question about her duties to change the subject. Marina watched as he took another sip of his drink. Yes, sir. The rest of the freedom fighters in that town are being hunted and taken out as we speak. She watched her father take a slow puff of his cigar before turning to face her. Joaquin Alvarez was about 5 inches taller than Marina's 5'8" stature, with a well-trimmed goatee and short slicked back hair. His skin was a bit more bronze compared to her caramel-color skin tone. Mr. Alvarez was an average-sized man, not much bigger than his daughter. Marina took after him more than her very curvy mother, which she didn't mind. Unlike her mother, she wasn't one to wear tight-fitting clothes. Mr. Alvarez let the smoke out slowly and gave her an approving smile. I'm sure you will take care of the remaining vigilantes as well as their leader. I have my men tracking them. Once they locate the leader, I will take him out personally, father. Marina assured him that the task will be complete. Seeking his approval had been her goal for most of her life. Good, I have a very important meeting in a few days, a meeting I would like for you to attend. It will determine the fate of our family business. I also will discuss more on the fact you want to create that little group of yours. He added in as she drank the remaining liquid that circled the glass. Marina's smile widened. Consider it your present for turning 21 in a few months, as well as evolving into an intelligent young woman. I know you want to be more involved with the business, and I have a plan for that. For now, just take care of this little nuisance. Her father walked to his desk and sat the glass down. Then we will discuss the group and men of your own controlling. Consider it done. Marina nodded. The soldiers and military men were always under her father, although they did listen to her, the last word came from him. Marina wanted a group of her own. Soldiers for her to manage to show her father she could take over the business one day. Make sure you call in the gravedigger to clean up the mess. That is the last thing I need right now, something causing this deal to go south. Marina didn't know what the deal was, but she would find out in time. Marina's father praised her for wanting to further her career in the family business. He taught her everything he knew and would allow her to form her little group to aid in the new business. Most family businesses usually were taken over by the male child, but his son Michael never showed as much promise as Marina. This would-be group would be a great example to Marina's father, to show him how well she could control the various situations, as well as on how well she would run the future business. Marina exited her father's office and made her way into the kitchen. She glanced to make sure Miguel was still stationed where she left him before turning down the small hallway towards the kitchen. Marina was going to make a soldier out of him, and a one worthy enough to protect her. As she approached the kitchen door, she could hear her grandmother telling the maid how to wash the dishes. Marina hated how her abuela thought she knew everything. The old bat was always nitpicking and putting her 2 cents in, even when it was not wanted. Marina walked in quietly and leaned against the wall beside the wall phone. She narrowed her eyes and watched the old lady practically fuss at the middle-aged woman over nothing. Marina needed to call the gravedigger, but was not going to do it while the crabby old lady was in the same room. Marina made the sound of a cat towards her grandmother as she played with the phone cord. It was a grim reminder how she killed her cat not that long ago. The grandmother knew it was Marina because the dead cat was laid on her bed like Jesus on the cross. The elderly woman jumped a bit and quickly waddled out the kitchen doing the sign of the cross. Marina was pleased with herself as she heard the grandmother muttering a short prayer on her way out. She despised how her grandmother or abuela wanted to run the show and thought she knew better than everyone. Marina would not stand for that one bit and didn't care if her father would be upset. Marina reached for the phone and dialed the number quickly. Most of the time she would get the others to do simple things like this, but she enjoyed the gravedigger. The phone rang a couple times before the man picked up the phone. "Hello?" The male spoke as if he was half asleep. "Fernando Sanchez." Marina speaks in a harsh tone. Fernando spoke frantically, and Marina could hear a loud thump. "We have work for you to do, come pick me up now." She then hung up the phone on the receiver. Marina then went to her room upstairs to change. The gravedigger arrived, and Marina walked outside her front door to meet him. Miguel was not far from her, and she smiled to herself. Her little bodyguard was learning quickly, but she would still give him a hard time. "Follow us out there," she commanded as she opened the car door. A small haze of smoke curled out into the night air, along with the sound of the radio blaring. Marina held on to the door and watched Miguel walk towards the SUV parked in front of the car a bit. Her caramel eyes followed Miguel, waiting to see as he made a foul face or comment, but he just followed orders. "New guy?" Fernando asked as he held a blunt in his hand. Marina slowly sat down into the car and closed the door. She then reached over and lowered the music a bit. She hated when he blared the music and yelled to speak over it. "Yes, he started tonight, but shows promise." Marina glanced over at Fernando, wondering why he was still sitting still and not driving. "Well, that is good, I guess. Most of the time you terrorize them to the point where no one wants to work with you." He grinned and took another puff. Marina narrowed her eyes. He was right, but she would not let him know that. "Why are you smoking that? And why are we still sitting here?" She shifted to where half of her body faced him. He chuckled once more and sat the blunt in the ashtray for a moment to put his seatbelt on and put the car in drive. Marina was getting a bit annoyed at how slow he was going, and he could tell. "The dead aren't going anywhere, Marina. Want a hit?" He offered her some as he picked it up from the ashtray. "No, you know I do not do drugs. We sell the product, not take it." Mariana shifted forward and put her seatbelt on. "Those are your father's words." He put the blunt to his mouth and drove forward. "Yes, but he is right." "The reason?" Marina was about to go into this long speech, but Fernando choked a bit. "Marina, please. Ease up, huh? I'm not those other foot soldiers, generals, or old boss men, how it is me." Marina knew he was right. There was only a handful of people she let get close, and Fernando was one of them. His laid-back demeanor and encouragement always set her at ease. Plus, he could make her laugh, and laughter was a way to a woman's heart, even if it was black like Marina's. She did prefer him high, because when he wasn't he tended to get a little chatty and paranoid. Marina cracked the window a bit and rested her hand on the door. "Still don't understand why you always come out with me on jobs. You are the princess. You don't have to get your hands dirty." Fernando watched the road and looked in the rearview mirror to see if Miguel was following. Marina did the same inside. "You should know not only do I enjoy the company and the feeling of being normal, but I find it calming being in the graveyard." Marina let her fingers run through her loose curls. "For one, that isn't normal. You are a bit more morbid than me, not complaining though. I like the company. It isn't the best job, but you make it bearable. Also, it isn't like I could be a soldier or anything. You know, I get shaky holding a gun and my aim sucks. Fernando let the blunt rest between his two fingers. That is true, and your uncle, my father's best friend, being one of the higher-ups in our family business, my father made sure you had a place, a job so to speak. Marina showed a rare smile towards him. She wasn't quite sure what drew her to him, but she enjoyed not only his company, but toying with him. At first, he was like the others and was deeply scared of her, but he soon learned that was how Marina was and took it often as a joke. Anyone else would have been cut or worse, but Marina enjoyed going to the graveyard and in the place of death. It was only fitting she would like the gravediger being the one who often was the cause of the death. Maybe afterwards we can go get a drink or two, huh? Fernando asked as he reached over to change the song. Are you asking me on a date? Marina's head leaned toward him as she eyed him. I guess, I mean, how long have you been following me out here? Just figure I ask if it was because of me or just my job. He let out a nervous laugh. You know, you are a whole lot better high. You actually have gall to ask me out. He glanced over at her. His vocabulary was not as evolved as her. Gall like balls? He asked. She couldn't help but laugh. Yes, balls, and I like that about you. You as well as your job. You're about the only person who knows how I am and is not scared to death. Oh, I'm scared, but I just know you like me too much to kill me. That, and I find it kind of hot being such a hot-tempered mommy. He did a little shimmy with his hips in his seat, but noticed she was glaring at him. Mommy? She asked, a bit offended. Yes, she did have a bad temper, a wicked way about her, and forceful attitude, but it was how she stayed strong and climbed the ladder. A woman in this business had to be cooler and more ambitious than a man if they were to be taken seriously. Even if her father was the boss, she still had something to prove to everyone else, and her father always told her that a strong woman scared weak men, and for her to grow thick skin. He knew it would be a battle for his little girl, so he wanted her prepared in all aspects. Marina knew she had to have twice the smarts, attitude, and coolness. This often made her out to be a tyrant to others except Fernando, and just recently she had noticed him. I'm sorry, just trying to get you to laugh and lighten up. Fernando flicked his end out the window and kept glancing over at her. Marina was thinking on how she should proceed. Always calculating her next move and what she should say or do. Running scenarios in her head and the best outcome. Anyone else would have got their tongue cut out for that comment, but I will let you slide for now. However, you are paying for supper. She added in and turned to face frontwards again. Sigh, Senorita. Fernando didn't want to tread in deeper waters. Marina didn't date often for a lot of reasons. Trust and time was a major one. She didn't trust many people, nor did she have the time to get close to trust anyone. Just don't tell your pops, okay? Fernando asked her. You know he would most likely flip. Seeing me is just the help. It would be fun to watch his reaction. Marina added in. She loved the torture and making them squirm. Fernando made another nervous laugh as he pulled off the main road and onto the back road. He parked the car a few feet from where the pile of bodies laid and popped his trunk. The SUV following parked behind him, mating and giving Fernando light. Miguel hopped out and helped the gravediger round up the bodies and stuff them into the trunk. The whole time Marina never took her eyes off Fernando. This deep fascination she had with him was rare and different. It wasn't love. Someone like her was not capable of a true feeling as such. Like most psychopaths, Marina is very manipulative and can easily gain people's trust. She learned to mimic emotions, despite her inability to feel them. Most of the time it made her appear normal to unsuspecting people. Seems like your guy Miguel should get a gold star. He is really putting in effort to impress you. Fernando glanced towards her as he started the engine again. He knows what is expected of him and the outcome if he fails. He would really impress me if he could figure out how to get our product and money past the police. Marina leaned against the hood of Fernando's car and watched the two of them shovel dirt. Oh, that is easy. The salons. Fernando spoke between heavy breaths. What? Marina almost didn't understand what he had said. Fernando stopped shoveling and leaned on the wooden handle. Salons. You see, Marina, you overthink too much. You think too big. You got to come back to earth and in the land of the little people. The poor and back streets is where most of the product and money comes from. So the salons are where most of the traffic of people come and go without questioning. They are always dealing in cash, and the police never pay them any attention. I bet if you cut those ladies in, they will let you run your operations there. Fernando gave her a wide grin before continuing to dig alongside Miguel. I knew there was a reason I let you live. Marina gave him a twisted smile. Oh, come on, it wasn't my fault your mom's bird got loose and ate your cake at your quinceanera. As I recalled, you killed the bird as well as the bodyguard who laughed at the messed up cake. Such a savage child. No wonder you have no friends but me. Fernando laughed at his own joke and glanced towards Miguel. Miguel was smart enough to not partake in the laughter. Chapter 5. The 3-month-long course in the academy would separate the men from the boys, or at least that is what the instructor said. JJ wasn't one for failing, but he also wasn't the type to be top of the class. He put his everything into passing, especially since it mattered to him to become a police officer. Being the class clown, JJ was often used as the test dummy. The instructors always called on JJ for things. He was the first to feel the defensive tactics, the first to be pepper sprayed, and pretty much the first involuntarily volunteered to be used in instructing. He always just took it as the instructor saw the most potential in him, and that was why he was always picked on the most. It also didn't help that he was the biggest clown, and most of the attention was on him. The laws were nothing to learn, it was all the physical stuff. The running and getting pepper sprayed and even tasered. The guys would often play a game to see who could withstand the spray the longest, and JJ, being who he was, always won. A lot of the time the crazy Cajun got into situations in which he learned that being the most physical didn't pay out. The instructor always got on his case for him to learn how to think, and to think fast in situations. The instructors would often just gossip him and shake their heads when Johnny would just be Johnny. Always laughing at things, especially serious moments. His laughter was contagious and would often cause the other in the class to laugh. Let's just say a lot of the reprimands were due to JJ's silliness. At one point most of the instructors believed JJ wasn't cut out for the job, except for one, Sergeant Landry. One day Landry sat down and had a heart-to-heart talk with the young man. He helped JJ realize he needed to get his act together. The clown soon after became the best student of the class, surpassing everyone's expectations. After the painstaking 3-month course, Johnny graduated from the academy. Graduation night, JJ and a couple of his buddies went down to the local bar. His mother protested, of course, but JJ was hard-headed and just wanted to celebrate. The Cajun knew better than to go out to bars and stay out late drinking. Johnny, let peer pressure win, pushed his conscience aside. He went with the other men to the bar without telling his mother. It was packed with people, young, old, bikers and regulars. The live band was jamming as the boys played Pull Away from the crowd. Oh man, can you believe it? We made it through and passed. JJ leaned on his pool stick and watched the other guy take a shot. Yeah, I bet you are happy, JJ, the instructors gave you 10 times of hell. The guy shooting pool said, and the others laughed. I guess that is what happens when you are the funny man, as he put it. JJ shrugged and took his turn. The Johnny's ball bounces off the velvet green table and knocked another ball into the middle of the table. JJ took a step back and walked to finish the rest of his beer. I gotta pee. He sat the glass down and leaned the stick against the wall. Oh, don't quit on me now just because you are losing, JJ. The guy laughed, and JJ gave him the bird as he started working his way through the crowd towards the bathroom. JJ reached to grab the handle and pull the door open, but it was locked for some strange reason. The Cajun cursed and kicked the bottom of the door a bit. Hey! Why did you take that hanky-panky elsewhere, huh? People gotta pee. JJ tried to scream over the noise before pressing his ear against the door. The music and vibrations were too loud, and he couldn't hear anything. A couple more pounds and kicks of frustration were given to the beat-up door before JJ turned to walk away. He had to go to the restroom bad and knew he couldn't use it outside, public indecency and all. What would the force think if he broke the law, being the one enforcing it? The pee-filled male soon remembered the gas station across the road. There weren't many people out and about at this time of night, so JJ ran across the street with ease and quickly entered the automatic doors. By this time, his teeth were almost floating, and if he didn't relieve himself soon, it would end up stained on his jeans. Bingo! JJ muttered as he spotted the restroom sign. He walked quickly toward the back, but when he found this door locked as well, he banged his head against the door. Oh, man! He held himself and did a little pee dance in the small hallway. He knocked on the door again, but stopped when hearing whomever inside flush. The sound of the sink water and them washing their hands made JJ more anxious. His bladder was pounding, and he could have sworn a little trickle came out. Good, they are almost done. He told himself as he did a little pee-pee dance, begging the person to hurry. The door swung open and out came a short, dark-skinned woman. Well, everyone was short compared to the 6'1" tall Simoneaux. The girl, or young woman, was very attractive. She wasn't the typical bone-skinny female. She was thicker and looked like she could have worn a size 14. None of that really mattered to JJ. He was always taught to look at the person's heart and not their waist, size, or color. The bladder drummed again, reminding him he still needed to pee. JJ came back to reality and lifted a brow to look at the men's bathroom sign. He had to make sure that it was the men's room. The last thing he needed was to get caught going into the women's bathroom. The young woman's purple lips widened at his double take. Sorry, the bar's restroom seemed to be being used for other purposes than just using the bathroom, she explained herself. So, I came over here to find out that the women's bathroom was out of order as well. So I used the men's. She gave him an apologetic look. You were at the bar across the street too? He asked, and the brown-skinned woman nodded. Yeah, I usually go for the music. I love the new cover band. JJ's bladder gave another throb. Throwing up a finger to signaling her to wait a minute, JJ ran in and closed the door quickly to relieve myself. It took a little bit longer than he expected, being he drank so much and held it for so long. He finished up and walked back out the bathroom. He was happy to see the young woman stayed put. Sorry for that. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, I don't owe there much, but when they have a good band I try and show up. I'm a sucker for good music. Plus, me and the fellows are celebrating. He leaned against the wall beside her. Oh, I know the feeling. I'm sorry I forgot my manners. My name is Rebecca, but most call me Becky. She held out her hand to me, and JJ took it slowly. Jonathan, Johnny, but my friends call me JJ. Nice to meet you, JJ. What were you celebrating? She asked, holding on to her red purse. It's weighed in front of her jean skirt and leggings. We just graduated from the academy. Why don't you join us? I can buy you a drink. Becky gave him a pearly white smile. Sure, just not too many. I don't want to have to walk all the way back over here again. JJ let out a chuckle. Well, hopefully the one at the bar is free to use as intended and not as a baby maker. The two laughed as they crossed the street. It was around 4 in the morning when JJ finally came home. His mother was wide awake and in the kitchen waiting for him. Good grief, Jonathan. You had me worried. She rose from the table and went to inspect him. Come on, Mom, I am an adult. He grumbled. Oh heavens, I smell the liquor. I taught you boys better than that. I swear if your father was around to see this. She fussed him. JJ was starting to get a headache from her screeching. He used his hands to squeeze his head a little. His mother caught sight of the fleur-de-lis tattoo on his wrist and almost lost it. Mary stood there shaking her head. You know better, Jonathan. We taught you better than this. JJ could see the disappointment in her eyes as she looked him over. Do you remember what me and your father taught you? She asked, holding her tattered robe closed. Always be yourself and remember where you came from, he mumbled. Yes, remember where you came from and what you learned. You were taught to go to church and obey God, not to go out and get hammered. She hissed before sighing heavily. Mary just gave her eldest son one last disappointed look before going to her room. JJ sat at the table, a bit guilty now of his decisions. The talks of his father ran through his head. He didn't remember the exact speech, but he did remember it sounded sort of like Mufasa's speech to Simba. The whole, remember who you are and where you came from speech. How his brother looks up to him, and that he is the man of the house when the father was not around. JJ missed his father, and his mind would often wander back on the last day he spoken to him. JJ had just graduated high school, and his dad couldn't stay for his graduation party. That night James Simoneaux would be shipped to the oil rig, where he worked as a welder, but would never reach the platform. The helicopter went down due to bad weather, and from that moment on, JJ had the responsibility of being the man of the house. All the responsibilities of caring for his mother and younger brother fell on the shoulders of the young man. Since high school, the great responsibility was thrust upon him. JJ crossed his arms on the table and laid his head down. A little help, Jesus. He prayed before dozing off at the table.